Welcome to today's CRM Magazine Roundtable web event, brought to you by Verint, Transversal, and RightAnswers. I'm David Myron, Editorial Director of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled, The Next Step in Intelligent Support, KM plus CRM. Now I'll introduce the speakers for today's event. Kelly Kelleher is the Director of Product Marketing at Verint. Chris Hall is the Chief Marketing Officer at Transversal. And Simon Yelsky is the Vice President of Product Management and Marketing at RightAnswers. So now let me pass the event over to our first presenter, Kelly Kelleher, Director of Product Marketing at Verint. Welcome to the broadcast, Kelly.
Thanks, David. So today I'll be talking to you about knowledge-infused processes. And what that means is basically using knowledge management to model the processes within your CRM in order to guide your agents and employees step by step through what they need to do to resolve a customer's issue or answer a question. So CRM has really become much less transactional. If you think back in your own life, if you have a question about your bank balance or when a bill is due for a utility or the hours or location of a retail establishment, do you call them up? Probably not. You probably just go online. And recent studies have shown actually this year for the first time, self-service is actually starting to overtake the phone in popularity. People are more likely to go to self-service than the phone. Now, granted, the phone is still quite popular. It's a very close second. But the types of calls are changing. So let's look at how those calls are changing. They're really becoming much more process-oriented. So when you, again, think back to your own life, when was the last time you did pick up the phone to call customer support? It was probably something really complex that you couldn't figure out on your own, or something you knew you'd be unable to do by yourself because it just requires interaction with the company directly. So I have some examples up here from some different industries if you want to go through the upgrade process on your phone with your contract. If you want a mortgage refinance, that's obviously not something you'd be able to do by yourself online. Or just very complex types of questions. You know, your internet's really slow. Well, that could be caused by lots of different things. You may not be sure what it is, so you probably need to call. Or your bill shows up from a utility or service and it's much higher than usual. So it's really more complex issues that in order to resolve them, it's going to require multiple steps and may even require multiple people in the case of something like refinancing a mortgage. So to be sure that these types of calls are handled as efficiently and effectively and accurately as possible, you need to make sure that all the right steps are completed in the right order. Now, of course, the reality is that CRM systems don't manage these processes at all in a lot of cases. And instead, they just rely on the agent to know how to complete the steps, to know what systems to go to and when, what answers to give, what order to complete all of the different steps. And they really just rely on the agent's memory or perhaps a big Word document that they have to reference to understand step 1, step 2, step 3. And so if organizations don't evolve their technology to better handle these processes, they'll start to see a lot more inefficiency, mistakes, rework and callbacks, and generally just more dissatisfied customers. Since we've seen, again, that customers prefer to use self-service, when they do need to call, many of them are already frustrated. So you really want to make this experience on the phone as effortless as possible. Studies have shown that the number one thing customers care about is that the company values their time. So if companies don't evolve and start to better handle these more complex process-oriented types of inquiries, they're really going to start to feel it in their bottom line. So just to sum up, the types of changes that these tools must adapt to are longer, more complex types of calls. It's not these very simple one-and-done calls anymore. And multiple applications required to resolve these calls. We see when I sit in contact centers, 20 different windows open on an agent's screen, and they have to toggle between all these different systems. Multiple participants are often involved to handle complex issues that require different steps. And there's really just far too much information to memorize. There's no way, no agent can be trained well enough to just know every answer. There's simply too much information. So you need to solve this through the tools and provide a way for these agents and other employees to be guided to these answers and presented with the right knowledge at the right time in order to resolve the inquiry. So with knowledge-infused processes, we'll see that we're able to improve the efficiency. So actually getting the customer off the phone faster, valuing their time, which again is the number one thing that customers are looking for you to do. Secondly is compliance. Processes are not just about being efficient and making the customer happy. In some industries, it's actually the law, and you can get in big trouble if your agents are not following these processes in the way in which they are required to do. If they skip steps, things aren't completed, there can be major repercussions, even resulting in fines for your company. So compliance is another really important reason to make sure that you're modeling these processes for your agents within your CRM. The third thing that knowledge-infused processes can improve is consistency. Another thing I see all the time when I sit in contact centers, if you sit with 5 different agents and they receive the same call, the same type of call over the course of their day, the 5 different agents will resolve the call in 5 different ways. They may all eventually get to the same answer, but they go to different systems, use things in different orders, refer to different articles and help sites to get there, and there's not a lot of consistency. So again, by modeling these processes, you can ensure consistency within your contact center. As they say, you can make every agent your best agent. So you can take whatever that ideal process is and make sure all your agents are following that same process so that you're not going to get a different answer or a different experience depending on who you happen to get to in the phone tree. And finally, customer experience. And that kind of encompasses everything above and more. More and more companies are less concerned with just measuring things like handle time, and they really want to measure that overall customer experience to make sure that they're providing their customers with the best experience possible so that they're going to continue being a customer, they're going to recommend you, which is a lot more important in the long run to your bottom line than just number of seconds on the phone. So let's look at a real example to start to bring this to life. What does knowledge-infused process look like? So let's say you're supposed to go on a business trip, but now there's a snowstorm and your flight has been canceled. So you're going to call up the airline or you may have booked this through your office travel company, so you give them a call. And it seems pretty straightforward. It's something that happens all the time. But it's actually really, really complex under the hood. This is a screenshot that has a million different steps from an example customer of ours for this exact process that they need their agents to follow. And you need to really consider so many different things. These questions here are just a subset, but you need to understand, was this ticket prepaid or was it a regular ticket? Is this a medallion customer or a regular customer? Did they already get to the airport and check some bags that are now sitting on a plane and they need to get them back? Are they maybe halfway through a leg of their journey? They flew to one city, now it's snowing and they're stranded halfway through their itinerary. Will this flight disruption require them to stay in a hotel overnight somewhere that you need to account for? There are so many different factors that can come into play when it comes to what sounds like a pretty simple type of customer service issue. So what you need to do is model this in an appropriate way that you can navigate through all of these different questions and answers and make sure you're checking everything that's required to create the best possible outcome for this customer so that they're booked on that next flight or their itinerary has been canceled, whatever it is that they're looking to do, you need to make sure you're getting through all of those steps. So how do we do that? How do we handle this intelligently? And the key to this is really context. You'll probably hear some of the other people on the phone today mention the word context as well. Context is so important to drive the right knowledge at the right time. Let me just stop and define it. What is context? Context is anything that you know that can help you better understand the customer's issue, who they are, what they need, and can better drive that experience. So customer context could be their flight itinerary, where they're supposed to go at what time, their other profile information, where they live, what, if it's not an airline example, what products or services they have with you. Any of those pieces of information are context. One of the best things about integrating knowledge management with CRM is the access to context, because a CRM system contains so much information about your customers. You can now leverage all of that information in order to use it to personalize the interaction. So let's walk through an example interaction. We start with the context of the agent. So what type of agent are they? If their job is to handle flight disruptions, we're going to already know that it's that type of inquiry. What channel are they on? Is this a phone call, or is this an email that may be a little bit less urgent? The channel can really make a difference. Then we take the information from something like the IVR, so we can then link up who that customer is and start to really get much richer context. Now we can take that profile, take the interaction history, the previous times they've contacted you, what products and services they have, what alerts are on file for that customer. And finally, take into account the context of the process. If it's a flight disruption, we want to understand the itinerary and what the process is for that and all the different rules. So we gradually build up this model of context, and that's what we use to guide the agent through that process. One thing to point out before we move on from the idea of context is that there can be too much of a good thing. Again, I said we have access to so much information now by linking knowledge management to CRM. It's important that as you go through a process, you should pick up the elements of context that are going to be relevant for that interaction. Otherwise, you're just overwhelming the agent with too much information. So again, if I've called up because my flight has been canceled due to weather, you really don't need to care about the fact that I have another flight coming up in 2 weeks to an entirely different destination, or that I sent an email giving feedback on my meal on a flight from a month ago. None of these things are relevant for this particular interaction. So you want to focus on the context that is relevant for this interaction. So let's go back to our flight example and see what we can do using knowledge-infused processes. First, we can ensure process completeness. So that's making sure that we've ticked all the boxes. We've made sure we check to see if they need a hotel voucher, if they're stuck overnight, or if we got their bags off the plane, if they were already on the plane. So we've made sure that we've been complete. Secondly, we want to maximize the process effectiveness. Even if you complete all the steps, there are certain orders in which you can complete the steps that are better than others. For example, they found with a travel company, if your flight has been canceled due to weather, you probably need to deal with the rental car, deal with the hotel situation, and of course get the person on a new flight. But that person who's stranded in the airport really just cares about getting a seat on another flight and making sure that's taken care of. So they're going to have much higher satisfaction if you immediately handle the flight portion of this question and give them that confidence and relief. Okay, I'm booked on another flight, it's going to be okay. And then you can spend the remainder of the phone call making sure their hotel and their rental car and anything else they may need is accounted for. So it's the same steps, but you're maximizing that customer experience and the effectiveness of those steps by guiding them in a specific order. Third, you can account for process variation and disruption. I know a lot of times when I'm flying for business, I fly out for a few hours and I'm back the same day. So if there's a snowstorm, I'm not going to want to be booked on the next flight out. It's too late. I just want to cancel the whole itinerary and I'll just dial in remotely for my meeting. So you need to be able to handle for different variations. Some people want to rebook. Some people just want to cancel. Some people may want to ask if you can get them on something on a different airline that may be able to fly closer to their itinerary. So you need to handle these different variations and disruptions and be flexible. Processes cannot be too rigid, so you're stuck in this robotic set of steps that the customer is unable to really work with you. So you need to have that flexibility. And finally, you can use knowledge at each step in the process to drive decisioning. And so that means, let's say a customer says, well, I'm a Diamond Medallion member. Isn't there something you can do? You may not be sure as the agent if there is anything you can do. You can check the knowledge base and see if there is at every step in the process to help drive that decisioning. One last thing to point out is that you can use knowledge-infused processes throughout your organization in web self-service, in the back office, digital channels like email and chat. All of these things use processes, so you can use these knowledge-infused processes throughout your organization. And then finally, it's important to measure. You always need to measure your success, and knowledge is an ongoing process. You're never done. So you want to measure your adoption. Are people actually following these processes and actually using the knowledge? And one thing I'd point out is if they're not, that doesn't mean they're doing it wrong. That means maybe look at your process and make sure it's right to see if you either need to drive adoption or perhaps adjust your processes. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact us. All of my information is below. And back to you, David.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Kelly. So now let's move on to our next presenter, Chris Hall, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Transversal. Welcome to the broadcast, Chris.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for attending today's event. I'm going to take a different approach. Kelly's on the process side of things, and we're at Transversal more on the information side of things. We're pioneering what we consider next-generation intelligence for smarter CRM. I'm going to take you down a little journey and talk to you a little bit about cognitive knowledge solutions. The first thing I said, if I'm an audience member, I want to know what's new and exciting about KM solutions. In our world, there's been a lot that's changed. And great things by analysts have been produced over the past couple of years. One of the best reports we could ever see as a knowledge specialist is Gardners Report coming out in 2014 saying knowledge management will transform CRM customer service. Right in our exact wheelhouse. But when they listed out some of the business drivers, in reducing time to answer by 20 to 80%, and I'll give you some realistic numbers. It's always funny to see Gardner's numbers higher than a vendor's numbers, but God love them, we'll stick with 20 to 80%. But proper KM reducing support costs by 25%, fast retrieval of the right information, increasing customer sat, which we all want to do, by 12%, and CSRs. I mean, all of these business problems that Gardner's stating, from our perspective, really nothing has changed on the business side. But where the real change has taken place is on the technology side. And I'll be talking to you today about what we consider the next generation of KM solutions, cognitive KM. Increasing the natural findability of knowledge, showing you some anticipatory knowledge services, showing you how social monitors can give you early warning to what's potentially going to be hitting your contact center or your service center. I'll show you how, knowledge is getting a lot easier. In my early days, I think some of the eGain guys are on the phone, but I remember using the eGain knowledge base way back when it was Inference before eGain bought it, and just putting it in and keeping it up, it was difficult. But some of the changes with cognitive technologies are making automatic classification and categorization so much simpler from a total cost of ownership. And really simplified administration is one of the biggest things I think cognitive KM solutions provide as a big change. To put it in perspective, and here's just kind of an overview slide of some of the technologies. We call our technology Prescience. It's our cognitive technology platform for next generation knowledge solutions. Some of the functions and features on the right-hand side I'll go through. But I thought to keep it in perspective, everything I'm going to talk about is going to have some kind of business case around it. So I thought I'd do is frame my presentation, section of the presentation, around what I consider the top 3 business drivers to integrate KM into your CRM initiatives. The first one, from a customer service side, it's all about case and cost deflection. From the vendor side, we'd like to say you're improving your self-service inquiries. From a total cost of ownership perspective, here are the numbers I would consider reasonable. Reducing online escalations by 20%, and increasing online resolution rates by almost double from that perspective. The cognitive technologies that we're leveraging to make it simpler and easier and improve efficiencies in online self-service, we call automatic SEO. We know most customers start with Google or Bing. In order for us to ever increase the self-service experience, we got to be a part of where the customer is starting their origin. We know most customers started on their favorite web browser. So why not make sure that when you store knowledge in our solution, we auto-optimize the knowledge for public search bots, so that when I search for a watch iPlayer on Chromecast, that my top answers are coming to the top of Google and Bing naturally. And this is not any SEO technique that we're leveraging. We're making sure that knowledge gets stored with all the proper SEO techniques for public URLs that make it improve the natural findability of what customers use. And really, we're going after minimizing the customer effort. If your customers can go to Google or Bing or their favorite crawler, search for and drive to your website, the experience is just incredible. In some cases, we've driven additional traffic, up to 30% additional traffic to websites, and we consider this particular functionality essential for mobile devices. I can't see opening up a mobile device and going to someone's website and trying to search inside of that. Most people are just going to either use Cortana or Siri, start their search from there, and hopefully get driven to your website. The next capability I'd like to talk about is what we call Device Smart. As I talked about earlier, I think the statistic came out that there are more smartphones on Earth today than there are people. You have to expand self-service to any device at this point. What we're doing on the technology side is a technology we call Device Smart. It extends your self-service offering, whether it's on the web, to a tablet and a mobile experience for free. There's zero administration code, additional code to go from web to mobile. It really simplifies the management and enhances the user experience. Again, if you ever saw one of our demos, we're demoing everything from a Siri voice response right into our knowledge base, and some of the other things that I'll talk about either really improve the text and navigation for mobile devices. Second business driver is new hire training for KM. How can I accelerate the proficiency and minimize costs of hiring new agents or new staff? Extremely big in retail, extremely big in any industry that has an uptake, almost double in staff around holiday times. And when on a total cost of ownership scale, it has one of the biggest effects on reducing agent training effort, almost 33%, up to 33% reduction in total cost of training agents. Some of the things that we found essential for this particular business is, first of all, our memory engine technology. If you think about the difference between asking, sitting and listening between a seasoned agent and a novice agent, if it doesn't know the answer, will actually search for exactly what the customer told them, versus a seasoned agent will interpret that. For example, I'm a customer, I call up and I say I have an error 6 on my HP printer. A seasoned agent would say, that sounds like a firmware issue, and it would interrogate, similar to what Kelly said earlier, it would go down a process. But a novice agent would just search for error 6 on my printer. The important thing that we're doing here is we took all the machine learning around not only languages themselves and words themselves, but around true phrases. So that if I search for Access in America or watch programs on vacation or access movies on holiday, they're all essentially the same question. And our memory engine technology sees that appropriately and actually services up the right response. What we're finding from an efficiency standpoint is new hire trainings. Some of our largest retailers in the UK are bringing training up just by sticking agents behind our tool and having them naturally search and finding the answers they need. It's an incredibly full semantic understanding, much more effective than kind of older technologies that leverage synonyms and stop words. The greatest thing is it kind of learns through experience and improves search accuracy. Now, being an agent on the phone, and if you're getting questions all the time, a person that is a good answerer of questions will never get one question. Customers take advantage of seasoned people on the phone. They take advantage of your knowledge and your wealth. And we're not only taking advantage of that from the standpoint of what we're delivering here with our SmartLink technology, but we're leveraging it also in a self-service experience. So we know and can predict what customers are likely to ask next with their original question. So if you see to the right, my initial question is, can I get next day delivery? My next question is probably going to be, how much does it cost? Can I choose the day of delivery? What is nominated day of delivery? What is the standard UK delivery charges? All of those things are typical questions that customers will ask. Now, in my older days of knowledge administration, that would be a related article that I would have to link to all the questions of the primary question to the subsidiary questions and possibly turn manual rankings on to get them to surface appropriately. Not with our cognitive prescience technology. All of this is dynamically generated with zero admin. And realistically, when you kind of show through some of the experiences from a self-service, it really kind of mimics a customer's train of thought. I ask a simple question, and the next questions get delivered automatically, really minimizing the customer's research effort. Again, it improves over time, but if you look at the overall satisfaction of customer self-service, if you can answer 7 questions in one self-service session, now you're really increasing your online customer satisfaction. The third business driver that I'll talk to you about is about agent productivity. It's typically where most people start in their CRM initiatives. How do I ramp up my agent productivity? I've done everything I possibly can by putting in a new CRM system, but I want to get those next efforts to minimize research and improve closure rates. In this case, we're looking anywhere between an 18% increase in first contact resolution and up to about 28% in CSR productivity. And those are huge when you think about the time savings that we used to implement a long time ago from just a CTI integration of shaving 1 second on a screen pop. Now we're shaving literally seconds, if not minutes, off call times with agent productivity. First thing for us, being a standalone KM vendor, is we have to make sure that we play well with all the other CRM vendors out there. Cloud technologies have certainly helped in this particular case, but we wanted to make sure that we had a smart plug-in for any CRM application. That we wanted to, and as Kelly talked about earlier, contextual intelligence is pretty important. We wanted to make the CRM desktop application kind of a smart app, leverage all the technologies there, and automatically deliver answers when we can, when the information and context is available to us. We provide complete contextual intelligence when and where needed. We have tight integration to ensure user adoption. That's one of the biggest things. If you have too many desktops, I think Kelly talked about earlier, having 20 desktop tools, the more you can streamline the desktops in process to what the agent normally does, user adoption goes way up. And if the business case is going to be to reduce training time, man, we don't want one more tool on the desktop. We need training. So we're all about one UI, one tool, and zero training needed. The other thing to talk about context is we're leveraging all the predictions and the smart links that we've done on the website in a little different way inside a CRM system. And we talk about it zero-click agent advice, or so easy the answer practically finds you. The more we can, and if you look at it from the background perspective, and I apologize on the quality, but I'm showing kind of a Salesforce case screen. As the Salesforce agent is filling out the call type, subtype, and putting in a description, on the right-hand side, Transversal is taking that contextual advice and doing the search for the agent automatically. We believe that in order to drive user adoption and increase usage of our knowledge solution, the CRM form has to actually contextually derive the knowledge results. We want minimal agent effort required. And when there is agent effort required, that it's simple one-click buttons, that I'm not filling out a huge form to submit an article change, that there are simple one-click buttons to give my ratings, very simple to what's happening in social environments today. One-click buttons to link, rate, filter, or provide feedback. So when I look at why integrate KM to CRM initiatives, because really everything has changed. And with that, I'll turn it back to David.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. Now let's pass the event over to our next presenter, Simon Yelsky, who is the Vice President of Product Management and Marketing at RightAnswers. Welcome to the program, Simon.
Thanks, everyone, and it's great to be part of this roundtable. And as part of my piece here, I'll take a slightly different angle to the topic of knowledge management and CRM, and that is really focused more on where is all of this great knowledge going to be coming from, who's creating the knowledge, and how is it able to get its way into the process and the search and the context when you need that knowledge. And I'm going to go at it from a couple of different angles, but really focus on some interesting cutting-edge ways of looking to do this intelligently, and I'll take you through 5 examples of technologies that might help you in this journey. Now, RightAnswers as a company has a different angle at it really through our DNA. One of the things that we do is we grew up as a knowledge creation company, writing knowledge bases, managing teams of knowledge writers, appreciating what it takes to have the right kind of knowledge, formatted properly and consistently, to be read by the right kind of community. So there's a different angle to the way we think, and hopefully today you'll see some of these examples through the technologies that we bring to the table to make that easier. We're also a company that looks at this from the perspective of there's no reason to have a knowledge initiative unless that knowledge gets used. So it is about the adoption and the use of knowledge, consistently high use of knowledge by all of your communities, agent communities, end user customer communities. And that's our angle, and we'll try to show you a couple of examples here of how that angle plays its way into the techniques and tools that might be available to you. So the first example that we wanted to talk about is a concept of gamification. And why does this matter? Well, gamification by itself is sort of a concept we all understand. Obviously, we're going to be talking about gamification as something that drives the right behavior by all of your teams, support teams, CRM teams, customers. And this is what we're trying to do here, is if you have great knowledge, you want to ensure that it's being used the right way, and everyone is sort of doing the actions that they organically want to do. So we want people to be engaged around knowledge, and we want to talk about how this is possible to do around knowledge. So we want to align in the gamification your objectives for your teams, right, and measure the right kind of stuff. So it's not just about measuring necessarily activity-based stuff, but it's measuring activities that make sense and that drive the outcomes that you want to achieve, whether that's an outcome of a call deflection, whether it's an outcome of finding a problem faster, whether it's an outcome of just ensuring that the agent, maybe a new agent, is actually finding the article that's out there for the first time, and all of a sudden they're a much more confident kind of person. So we want to focus at this at the what's the right thing to do. Now, how does this relate to the concept of knowledge management and CRM is, of course, looking at it through the glass of knowledge-centric gamification. So as a company, one of the things that we're interested in and we want to work with our customers around is driving this behavior. So we want to measure your knowledge activities. We also want to measure, for those of you who are familiar with the concept of knowledge-centered support, behavior along the processes like KCS. And in these games that we manage, we create different actors. And in our case, the actors are folks who are either using knowledge, so it's end users, support agents, knowledge creators. We, on top of that, have specific meaningful activities. And these are not necessarily just search and view, but the activities that we're tracking might be, is somebody editing the content when it didn't get high rating? Is somebody providing comments? Is somebody actually linking my answers to my cases in my CRM? So it's about sort of providing these in a way that makes it easier to do. And it's about delivering this out of the box. So one of the things with this approach is to try to say, how can we organically give your teams the power to do it in a way that you don't have to think about it? And as I said, this is done in our case through out-of-the-box games. And these games are problem-solver games, creator games, user games, knowledge contributing games, and then monitoring of all of this. So this is the first tool and the first sort of approach we wanted to suggest here to drive the right adoption and the right behavior with everyone around knowledge. The second concept I wanted to talk about is knowledge quality. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's very near and dear to our hearts as folks who grew up in the knowledge creation world and who appreciate the complexity of creating knowledge and having knowledge. We all deal with this on a daily basis. So knowledge is very important, and the type of and the quality of knowledge certainly makes a big difference. So it's not always just finding the answer, but finding a great answer is what you're thinking about. So you want to figure out, how do I do this, right? What are some of the challenges in creating knowledge when you have lots of teams involved, lots of different skill sets involved? And you want to encourage this not sort of as a training exercise, because we all know it's impossible to train all of our agents and all of our teams. It's about making it organic as part of the overall process. And that's the thing I wanted to talk about here, which is unique ways of doing knowledge quality, which could be built into your knowledge workflows, which could be built into the whole knowledge creation process, which automatically checks the quality of knowledge as it's being created, and it's automatically measuring whether, in fact, knowledge is good enough for either first-time agents, your self-service customers, and you can immediately say, this knowledge might be improved, but you are building this day one into the process. That's the second one I wanted to focus on. Let's go to the next one. The next topic I wanted to talk about is the automation of knowledge. And what I mean by this is that you are starting off in a spot, and things change all the time. And the problem with things changing is that as an organization, you might not have the knowledge that wasn't needed necessary, but it's needed today. And how do you know that? How do you know when knowledge is missing? In which case, looking for something that doesn't exist isn't quite going to work. So one of the ways that we're approaching this, and one of the interesting, intelligent ways of looking at it, is through the concept of, is it possible to identify these gaps? Is it possible to look at the search activity, identify the missing knowledge, and start the process of creating the missing knowledge before too many people ask for it? So this is a key element to fill the gap of things that are unknown to you because you're just simply not aware of something, or when things change, do it proactively, do it across the teams, and not have to make it into a separate process, which is quite daunting for most of us who are dealing with knowledge in the world of CRM. Let's move to the next topic here. The next topic is another interesting topic, which is how do you get to the knowledge? So there are many, many different examples of how a customer looks for knowledge. Obviously, example of public search engines, going to a website of a company and looking for it. But there's also cases where, in many of our situations, we have a knowledge base in one place. We might have online help stored somewhere else. We have web applications that are prevalent throughout, and you really want to be able to bring the knowledge to the application rather than having the customer look for this knowledge. So one of the ways that the market has done this, and one of the ways that RightAnswers has approached this, is through a concept of knowledge spotlight, which is make it part of wherever you are, your customer is, your agent is, but do it in the context of what the problem is, or what the page is, or what you might know about a specific area. So the way this might be done is that you want to sort of be able to put this anywhere in your world. So you want a contextual knowledge spotlight plugged into your world. You want to be able to style it and make it nice. You might want to do interesting UI and user experience elements to it in terms of where it is, how you size it. Does it feel like an individual with a picture? Does it float? So there's lots of ways to make it very personal. But once again, the idea in this particular case is bring the knowledge to me. Don't make me go search for knowledge through an element of this knowledge spotlight. And the final one that I wanted to discuss today as an example of an interesting approach to improving knowledge management and CRM is the concept of video support. Now, video support is nothing new, of course. However, there's different types of videos. And one of the things that we all try to do in the world of customer service and CRM is not necessarily to create marketing videos, but to create very quick video answers. So, if you could have it your way, instead of having text and image-based answers, you would want everything to be video-based answers and have those come up for all of your interactions with your customers. And this is the area that we wanted to address. Is it possible to enable as many people as possible to do video support. So the idea is, let's enable not a few people in the organization to be video specialists, but let's enable everyone who's on the front lines to be able to create my video answer right at the time when I'm having a problem, right? That would be great to do, right? We want to be able to maybe give them simple enough capabilities. One of the challenges is, let's not put together a complex video tool. We all know what those look like. Let's put together something that everyone can use in a way that makes it a very highly adopted kind of approach. Let's also figure out how to not have our videos stored everywhere except my own knowledge base. Right? We all know videos sit in third-party video repositories on my file shares. What about putting them all into one place where you control them, you understand how they're used, you can create metadata, and providing integrated access into these videos? So this is kind of the last interesting topic that we wanted to discuss, which is how to take videos and make it the prevalent way to deliver knowledge and answers to your community. So one more slide to kind of put it all together for me, and that is that at the end of the day, we understand that there is lots of things to make it work. One of those things is having great knowledge and having a great place or a hub where all this knowledge can reside and be delivered to CRMs and any other channel of support. That's all I have to say here. Thank you very much, and back to you.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Simon. I do have some questions for our presenters, so I would like to ask those. First, let's start off with Chris Hall at Transversal. My question to you is, what do you see are the top advantages or benefits of a cognitive KM system?
– And Chris, sorry, David, just didn't want to make sure I was not disconnecting and taking you off of mute here. So, I'll start with the most obvious. Simplifying overall administration of knowledge. Knowledge should just dynamically generate on its own. I think there's some really great things that we're learning from what IBM is doing with their cognitive solutions on how we can not only understand. I mean, for me, getting at really good knowledge is really understanding the heart of why and what and how people ask questions. If you can master that, you can deliver them the exact information you want as you need to do that. So that's some of the smart stuff that we're doing. Simplifying administration. There's no need to go into a back-end system and do a whole bunch of manual knowledge linking anymore. Improving the natural findability of knowledge. There's nothing cooler, I think, when Amazon first came out with their recommendation engines. You buy a product, you get recommended. Same thing with knowledge. There's nothing cooler in a self-service experience to go and get your initial inquiry solved, but also get 3 other questions you didn't anticipate you needed when you first went there. So a lot of eliminating of manual classification and really a lot of anticipatory services around what mimics the human train of thought around the Q&A process.
All right, great. Another question for you, Chris. Do you have any APIs for embedding your prescient technology into a mobile app?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, it really depends upon your, so we can make mobile as simple as just leverage what's on your website. Will work perfectly fine on your mobile device, but there's a lot of statistics, especially in retail, around consumers wanting to use your app and not use your web-enabled app. So we've made sure that we can integrate our solution directly in either in process or on menu. And we've done it with, bankings for bill pays, for money transfer, and even for bike rental apps. So I guess short answer, yes.
All right, great. Let's bring Kelly from Verint into the discussion. Kelly, how do you define some of you talked about knowledge-infused processes. How do you define some of these processes without sounding too scripted and robotic?
Yeah, that's really the key because, people, when they call up customer service, they want to talk to a human. They don't want to feel like they're talking to a robot. So it's really about having flexibility. So the processes are there as a guide, and you want to obviously make sure the things that are required, especially for compliance reasons, those are fixed. But otherwise, the process is something that the agent can use in a flexible way. It's there on the screen, they can see it, but your more advanced agents who really just know what to do anyway, they're able to skip steps, they're able to have more of a conversation. So it's there visually as a guide, and it's there technically as a guide for the required steps, but you enable that flexibility as well. So you have to find a nice balance.
All right. Another question for you, Kelly. How do you build these processes into your CRM system?
Yeah, it's an interesting process to do, because what we really do is get in a big room with an even bigger whiteboard and start to talk in the room. We would have not only your contact center managers, but also several actual agents from the floor, and talk about, okay, you get this call, what do you do? And really the most difficult part of the process is actually coming to consensus on what is the right thing to do. Everybody has their own opinions. So you have to really think about, how do we as a business want to handle these types of calls? And you literally whiteboard these things out, the different customer journeys and how you want these things to occur. And then from there, becomes a bit technology dependent on how your technology handles it. But you can create business objects. If your software is flexible enough, you can model your specific business processes that you want to follow into the application. So you build your business objects, you build your service levels that you want to happen from step to step, and you model that. But really the hardest part of the process is sitting in the room and hammering out what you really want your business process for your customers to be.
All right, great. Thanks, Kelly. Let's bring Simon from RightAnswers into the discussion. Simon, how do you handle the migration of a company's existing knowledge?
Good question. So first of all, it's not necessarily about the migration of knowledge. There are different approaches to leaving knowledge where it is. Oftentimes, that's a good first step, especially if you're not sure about the quality of the knowledge that you're trying to migrate. So one of the things that we as a company would recommend is actually leaving the knowledge where it is and searching, federating, seeing the activity around that knowledge, and then if you needed to migrate the knowledge, you can migrate it into a central knowledge base. The reason to migrate the knowledge is usually not for the sake of migration, but for the sake of improvement of the knowledge itself, because it's so highly used, or for the purpose of measuring it in a better way, so that once it's centralized, you can have much more control over how it's being used and who is using it, and therefore you're sort of building out a better road for it. So knowledge migration is definitely a process we all deal with at some level, but I think we all need to take a step back and say, am I migrating the right content? Do I need to migrate anything? And how do I build high-value knowledge in my knowledge environment?
All right, great. Another question for you, Simon, is do your products only integrate with CRM systems, or can you integrate with other systems and channels?
We certainly can integrate with many other applications, as many knowledge products do, including ours. We are a knowledge hub, and the whole point of having a hub is having spokes that enable other people and other tools and applications to take advantage of that knowledge. So one of the challenges that we see is that in a multi-vendor environment, usually these tools are from different suppliers with different capabilities. The one thing that they all need is consistency in knowledge. If you wanted to do multi-channel support, then you wanted to go through whatever channel you're going, you want to get the same answer, obviously. So as part of that, a company that provides a knowledge hub like us has to integrate to CRM, to case management, to even IT tools for internal support, and of course all of the multi-channel tools, whether that's chat, whether it's IVR, to once again give that knowledge to where it's necessary, and it's a whole collection of endpoints where that knowledge is most useful. So it's an interesting, of course, hub and spoke picture. Let's get the knowledge to where the tool is that's actually requesting knowledge.
All right, thanks, Simon. I'd like to now ask our viewers to submit their questions. I already have a few from some viewers I'd like to look at. I just also would like to remind you, if you have a question, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. As I stated earlier in the program, if we aren't able to get to your question during the live event, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Okay, so Simon, since you went last in the presentation, let's start off with you. What are the trends as you see it for exposing KM to customers? What are some of the top trends there?
So first of all, it's interesting to have a roundtable with folks who are all doing similar things but taking different approaches. And of course, I think we all see different trends that we're all trying to address from our angle of our customers. So from RightAnswers' perspective, we see a couple of trends that are interesting to us. One of the trends is the fact that knowledge itself is really now becoming social knowledge and a knowledge base combined with it. So one of the big trends is how do you collect and connect my social conversations and social knowledge with my knowledge base? That's one of the big trends that we all have to deal with. The other trend that we're seeing is the trend of interactive content. We had talked about video content, but there's certainly all kinds of interactive content, and the further out you get to the customers and the consumers, the more interactive they want it to be. So it's not necessarily videos, but it's certainly more of hot zones and images and sort of decision trees and more interaction to help me navigate to where I need to go. And maybe the last trend I'll mention would be the trend in the area of search paradigms and how critical the search is to this environment, and how folks are looking at intent-based searching, at intelligent searching, at virtual assistants that sort of act as a search assistant. So those are a couple of trends that I would perhaps highlight as things that we see. But as I said, I'm sure we all see interesting angles to this pretty wide topic.
All right, great. Thanks, Simon. Kelly, here's a question for you. What are some quality KPIs for sales and customer service?
It helps to first back up and ask yourself what it is you're looking to achieve. It's one of these questions that I answer with a question because, some organizations, if you look at, lower-end retail, who their margins are very, very thin, they're going to be all about cost, and so they're going to be looking at every second of their handle time. And so their metrics are going to be more around those operational efficiencies. Some other organizations who really thrive more on loyalty are going to focus more on the customer experience. So I would recommend with them that they look at really enterprise feedback management and do a lot of surveying and understand that. From a knowledge-specific perspective, first of all, it's very important to get your before picture. You can't just start measuring metrics after you're done. So get your baseline. I think some important things are to look at adoption. Who's actually using the knowledge base and when? Like the other speaker said, if they're not using it, it's not adding any value. So you want to really look at your adoption and any issues you have there. And then secondly, look at your knowledge gaps. When are your agents or customers looking for something in the knowledge base and not finding it? You can either look for searches with no answers, where they didn't click on anything, or where they clicked and never really found a solution. So those are really, I think, two top things that are really helpful to look at.
All right, thanks. Chris, there's a question in here that perhaps you can shed a little light on. The question is just simply put, is it better to educate customers?
Yeah, the funny thing is I've seen this question a lot, and it comes from the question is, do you, I'm assuming, and I apologize if I'm taking this the wrong way, but do you educate your customers before you educate your agents from deploying a KM perspective, and what's the best practices? Should we deploy KM on the web first or internally? I'm assuming at this point someone in the organization has already deployed KM at some point, but you may be doing a technology refresh and asking the question. Let me give you a worst-case scenario, and Kelly mentioned it in the very first part of her pitch, was the person-to-person interaction is getting more and more complex. So think about those 3 business plans that I talked about. If your business plan is to increase agent efficiency and lower average handle times, and I deployed my solution on the web to start, aka educating your customers, your after effect is going to be customers are smarter, they're more educated, they've already got their first 3 questions answered, and when they come into your contact center, they're going to have a very difficult question. all the easy stuff has been answered. My AHT is going to adversely increase somewhere in the vicinity of 12 to 15%, which is the opposite of what my KPI was to start the whole project. So in a worst-case scenario, if your business driver is agent efficiency, you better deploy internally first versus externally first. So I just wanted to give you a little heads up. So the sales and marketing answer would be yes, always educate your customers. But I think the consultant answer, the experienced person in me would say, if it's all about cost savings, absolutely deploy on the web. But you also have to be cognizant of what you're doing is going to have some after effect inside the contact center. They're going to be a little bit more complex, and your AHT is going to go up. And there's a lot of interesting best practices around that, but I'll stop there. So simple question, but hopefully not so simple answer.
All right. Well, thanks for that. It looks like we're approaching the top of the hour, and I apologize that we're not able to answer all questions, but as I stated earlier, all questions will be answered via email. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions, and also thanks to our speakers today, Kelly Kelleher, Director of Product Marketing at Verint, Chris Hall, Chief Marketing Officer at Transversal, and Simon Yelsky, who is the Vice President of Product Management and Marketing at RightAnswers.